Graham Plattner has suspended his race. Multiple victims have come forward. There's 3 main victims. 2 we have video of, interviews, and their testimonies. They're to the public. I don't know who the 3rd person is, but we're thinking about them and we wish them well, of course. Here's Graham's message that he has put out, and then I'm going to show you how creators have reacted, specifically women, and then I'm going to have a larger conversation about this whole thing, including my own chat, in regards to how we talk about rape victims and how we accidentally victim blame even when we don't have the intention, because it's really a complicated issue of sharing pain and, thinking, oh, I wouldn't have done that in this situation. So let's hear from Graham first.
This is incredibly difficult because I know that some will think it's an admission of guilt, and it most certainly is not. We're not doing it because of the allegations. We're doing it because of the structures that are being taken away from us by those in power. And I also feel an immense amount of responsibility to everyone who has worked so hard to get us to where we are. We went toe-to-toe with one of the most entrenched political systems in the history of the world, and we won. We beat them on June 9th in overwhelming numbers. We did it the right way. We built a campaign. We engaged in electoral politics. We motivated people. We banded together. We did it the way that we were told we are supposed to make change. And we won. And now they are not going to let us have it.
Oh, brother. Who is they that won't let them have it? And 2, you were not the victim. See how he's playing the victim?
Not if it's me. And so we're suspending campaign operations. I want to make clear, though, I intend to file my paperwork to withdraw. The process needs to assure that what comes next is reflective of the Mainers who on June 9th turned out and showed that they are desperate for a different kind of politics. It needs to be driven not from back rooms, but by the will of the people.
Okay, well, the will of the people says bye. I know some people are defending him. Some people are saying he deserves to be in this space. He deserves to be a changed person. We should give people a chance to change. Again, he is asking for power. We need to be more diligent, and we need to use discernment about who we give power to. Okay, so here's one of the girlies. This is Nikita. You guys mentioned her on Discord. I'm just going to show you her very short video just about, again, a reminder not to trust men who call themselves a leftist, because there is a difference between embodied values, and it's multi-layered, because you can be a leftist and be an anti-capitalist, but that doesn't mean you're dismantling other, thought processes or deconstructing. So remember that even though people use a label, it doesn't mean they are those things. You can call yourself a vegan every day, but if you're eating chicken every night for dinner, you're not a vegan, right? Okay.
Automatically trust progressive men are safe because of their politics. In fact, you need to be more discerning with these men than right-wing men. If you're a progressive guy watching this, please don't feel attacked. In fact, I'm pleading with you to listen because you might just not be aware this is happening in leftist circles. Progressive men will use their politics as a shield for their misogyny. Psychologists have a term for this. It's called moral licensing, where doing something good makes you feel justified in doing something bad. Kind of like having a green juice after a drunk night out. How could I possibly be a bad person when I vote for abortion rights, when I vote for Medicare for all? And as a leftist woman, you start to gaslight yourself. He's a feminist. He wants equality. Surely he didn't mean to treat me horribly. Obviously, this is coming off the heels of Graham Plattner, a main Senate candidate who was just credibly accused of sexual assault. Look what Jenny Roscoe said about why she didn't come out earlier. I support his politics, but not him as a person. Progressive men can also have their heads in the clouds because they're constantly praised for their beliefs. Oh, it's so nice to hear a man talk about women's issues in healthcare and immigration. Meanwhile, a woman talking about these things gets dismissed, which is why we need actual well-meaning progressive men. When a woman speaks out against misogyny in the leftist space, she'll get told she's just standing in the way. Might as well just let a Republican. Might as well just let someone who's supporting AIPAC win. The irony is that sometimes I've had better dates and interactions with so-called traditional men than progressive men. Because while the former may
Okay, I don't know about that, girly. That's doing too much in this conversation, genuinely, because that kind of defeats her overall message. I've never dated a conservative man or a traditional man, so I have no idea, but I just say doubt it.
Believe that women are inferior. They're operating on the belief that the world as it stands right now treats women as inferior. And so they take more initiative, put in more effort, are more chivalrous often. Progressive men tend to think that because they believe in equality that the world already treats women as equals, but it doesn't. So they often think that they don't have to put in as much effort because we're equals. Progressive men have great politics about everything except for feminism, which they believe in when it reduces their own obligations, but not when it requires more of them. True leftist ideals will not be achieved without first dismantling patriarchy and race while we're at it, then class. Hoarding resources and destroying the earth is about dominance and control, which is patriarchy. How we let men treat women is how we let them treat everything else. Do not.
So, okay, there's something to be said about, and I don't know her work very well, so it's like, I think the only TikTok I've ever seen from her, maybe I've seen a couple, I'm not sure, but genuinely, I like the way that she did the hierarchy, right? The patriarchy, capitalism, or patriarchy, white supremacy, capitalism, because again, this obsession with leftists to say I'm anti-capitalist first, for me, I just don't see how that works, because all you're doing is saying, hey, let's make an amazing economy where white people are still in charge and act like white people are just gonna be like, yeah, I'm willing to share this with other people. They're not even willing to share the bad economy with other people. Like, they're not even willing to share capitalism. So I don't know how you're going to get these white people to dismantle capitalism to share socialism or communism. Like, it's just a weird idea. But I think ultimately her point stands that we need to be careful about the way men weaponize the labels they use to feel, quote, safe. I'm going to show you Rebecca Watson. And just a part of her video she put out yesterday about this as well. I loved her. I just loved her video about it. But in particular, Rebecca Watson was the woman who was trapped in an elevator with a man, and it was elevator gate. And he, in middle of the night, while she was heading to bed, asked if he can come up for coffee. And she was like, maybe don't trap somebody in an elevator when asking this question. Maybe give them a chance to walk away, because that was definitely an awkward elevator ride. And people just dragged this woman, harassed this woman, stalked this woman. It was a very bad time on the internet. And not too far off from Gamergate and Anita Sarkeesian and all that stuff. Like, everything is all connected. And I do think a lot of those men who grew up around that time now are 40 or 35 or whatever they are. And they haven't done the work to deconstruct patriarchy, to deconstruct what they did in the past, to even think to apologize for the way they treated Rebecca or any of these women at that time, right? So this plays into why people are reacting the way they are to the victims who have come forward with Graham Plattner, and why streamer men are now pretending like they didn't play defense for Graham Plattner. I mean, TYT comes up, Kyle Klinsky comes up, Majority Report comes up, and Hassan Piker comes up. And even though people are swearing that they didn't do as much, or it wasn't what they, it wasn't like that, they absolutely were. And most of the women that I am following have mentioned at least those 4 people. And I'm going to show you some of the clips today from at least some of them. But Rebecca has this really great section in her video. It's about 12 minutes in. And I just want you to watch it again, because when Kyle Klinsky made these videos and I initially I showed it to you on my stream, I was told I was dividing the left. I was told I'm doing too much, that Kyle Klinsky is doing more than me, and that I should be quiet. Remember, just listen to the way he talks about the initial victim that came forward because she was Republican, because she worked for Heritage Foundation, because she defended Kavanaugh, regardless of how we feel about that. This is the woman named Lindsay Fifield. We're going to watch her interview in a second. Regardless of how you feel about her, and we do feel a way, I told you I believed her when I heard the story because Graham dated her. So like Rebecca says in this video, funny that Lindsay's Republican past is used against her, but Graham's isn't, because Graham dated her. He admitted he had problems with alcohol. He admitted that he was rough and inappropriate with dates or people he was dating. And she, remember, her accusation then was that he was rough, he was loud, he was abrasive, he was like physically threatening. It gets worse. Her latest update is even worse. And it's worse for a reason, that these women didn't come forward with their full stories, which is very typical, because they don't want to have to tell all of their business, but even what they told wasn't enough for the men. For a lot of the women on the left who Anna Kasparian, you know what I mean? Emma from Majority Report, shame. But look at this, just watch.
Here's Kyle Klinsky of Secular Talk.
All right, y'all, let me walk you through the absolute worst smear campaign of all time and how it
So this is 4 weeks ago. This is the last month when the first victim came forward.
Fired spectacularly in a way that may be the biggest failure of a hit job of all time. Quite literally, okay? So first, let me start with this, a little breakdown of exactly what happened here with the attack on Graham Plattner from the New York Times, from the Israel lobby, okay? To recap, Dem and Rep operatives spent the week setting the narrative that Graham Plattner is a predator. Pro-Israel New York Times runs a story on Graham Plattner, done by a pro-Israel reporter, literally. She got an APAC award in college, by the way, okay? No SA allegations, none. They talked to 6 exes, 3 say he was fine. 2 of the remainder say he drank and womanized. The last is a conservative activist who protected Brett Kavanaugh. Literally worked for the Heritage Foundation. That's the Project 2025 people, okay? A Republican insider who on the record said she wants to campaign for Collins and attacks Graham Plattner with all these absurd claims, quite frankly. Okay, they continue here. She claims Plattner trapped her in a room. The New York Times reads her diaries, texts, Google chats, and Facebook messages. Nothing corroborates her story. That's an important point. So 0 evidence. Republican operative attacking a Democrat who's leading to take a Republican seat. 0 evidence for any of the claims. Okay, more. New York Times finds a text from the accuser saying she, quote, would personally campaign for Susan Collins. This is the most obvious Zionist smear campaign in history. The GOP attack on Plattner failed. What are you, fucking stupid? How desperate are these people? No, what happened was, and I actually know from some behind-the-scenes sources who were close to this, what happened was you had this pro-Israel reporter who was desperate to take down Graham Plattner. By the way, the same so-called reporter also did a number of hit jobs on Zoran Mamdani. That should tell you something. Okay. So this person was steering the story, told this Republican operative that, oh yeah, no, we have like a bunch of people and they're making SA allegations against him. So we should definitely put yours in there and you tell us your story and we'll put that in there. And so they overpromised and underdelivered. There were no SA allegations. They never existed. It's bullshit. They literally ran with allegations that had zero evidence from a Republican hack. If they had any fucking whispers of SA, they would have had them bitches front and center. And the headline would have said,
They would have had those bitches front and center. If there were credible allegations, they would have had those bitches front and center.
they literally ran with allegations that had zero evidence from a Republican hack. If they had any fucking whispers of SA, they would have had them bitches front and center. And the headline would have said, Graham Platter accused of sexual assault. This is all I need to see to know she's a lying hack with a very clear political move. And all the Republicans are sitting there and they're turning into the woke 1.0 ones who are like, believe all women? Even pro-Kavanaugh Heritage Foundation, Project 2025 activists who are professional liars who have a history of lying? I thought you guys wanted to believe all women. And Democrats are there like, fuck you, suck my nuts from the back. She's a lying bitch. Own it. It's a fact. Everybody knows it.
So
she's going to show you the updated video from Kyle. Note that I watched it and I did not see an apology. This man should either be deplatformed or he owes a insane apology to all the women he doubted, and he needs to hold himself accountable. Hassan, every single man that allowed Graham to even slightly be pushed into the spotlight in any capacity owes people an apology. Disgusting.
Fifield is an awful conservative who supported awful people, including actual rapists like Brett Kavanaugh. I certainly won't argue against that, but I also don't think that a person like that can't be assaulted by a boyfriend.
Exactly.
Especially the kind of
Especially since they dated. They literally were dating.
boyfriend who would date a person like that.
Exactly.
For some reason, her conservative history is damning for her claims, but not at all damning for Graham Plattner, who chose to date her for 2 years. Okay.
Exactly.
But no, that was enough for these progressives to say that she's definitely lying and Graham Plattner is telling the truth, that he did not do that. Okay, are you ready for the most heartbreaking part? Fifield was telling the truth that the New York Times had another woman who was assaulted by Graham Plattner. That woman was Jenny Rassicot, who backed down from telling her story to the
So we reviewed Jenny's story the other day.
New York Times, in part because of the moral conflict that she had between supporting Plattner's politics but not supporting him as a person. She appears in the New York Times article to say that Plattner came to her house uninvited, but she declined to elaborate on what happened next, other than to say it was enough for her to end the relationship because he was reckless and unsettling. But then she saw the liberal and leftist media completely tearing Fifield to pieces. These disgusting assholes confidently pushed out video after video after video, calling this woman a lying bitch and a paid shill who could never bring down the progressive champion that is Graham Plattner, to the point that they forced a rape victim to step into the spotlight against her will.
Exactly. This is what I say in rare opportunities. Women, rape victims, truly come together to support each other, because even though we all disagree, right, with Lindsay's political opinions and the fact that she has supported sexual abusers on the Republican side, we all agree with that. It doesn't mean Republican women aren't being raped. That's why there's a part of feminist empathy that a lot of us feel on the internet, which is watching women in these like tragic situations. And yes, this is what my latest commentary video was about. Like, are you racist if your boyfriend's racist? And are you homophobic if your boyfriend's homophobic? It's really deeply layered because yes, in some aspects, and also these women are targeted, tricked. They believe what they've been taught. There's so much propaganda that goes into brainwashing women in patriarchal bubbles, and deconstructing away from that is so fucking hard. And I think a lot of these liberal kids who are born in liberal households really take it for granted how easy it is to just grow up, quote, at least starting off as a Democrat or as a liberal, because you have no idea how much like propaganda has to be deconstructed from the brain of a kid who grew up their whole life hearing Fox News in their house 24/7. Like, you just have no clue what's going on, right?
Rassicot said she later felt compelled to go public about her experience because the reaction to the Times story was dominated by controversy about another woman, Lindsay Fifield, who alleged Plattner mistreated her and faced attacks because of her ties to the Republican Party. My part of the story was just a read-over, Rassicot said in an interview, and the story was Lindsay and the accusations of her being politically motivated. The absolute irony of these commentators going after Fifield for supporting Kavanaugh when they are doing the exact same thing to her. They supported a gigantic piece of shit man to the point that a rape victim had to step up to try to stop her abuser from gaining immense political power.
Oof.
Incredibly, it appears that Rassicot is finally a perfect enough victim for these commentators. She's not a civilian in Iraq or Afghanistan. She's a registered Democrat, not a Republican op. And she told enough people that Plattner raped her that most everyone has finally given up on Plattner. Oh, not everyone, though. Cenk Uygur, for instance, of the Young Turks, still going with bitches be lying. But
literally, the response from TYT is egregious. I'm going to show you next. It's absolutely fucking offensive.
Here's Kyle Kulinski reporting on the Politico story.
There's a few things about this that are extra concerning. The previous allegations were easy to dismiss because it was a literal Heritage Foundation Republican insider.
See, the fact that it was easy to dismiss is exactly the fucking problem. It's exactly the misogyny I was pointing out the first time I reviewed these stories. It was only easy to dismiss because you decided Republican women can't be raped. Even though women in conservative bubbles are actually, I feel like, more likely to be raped. Like, because their husbands don't believe in marital rape or because their husbands feel entitled to their bodies. Like, this is sort of the irony. I assume liberal or conservative women are more likely to be assaulted by their partners. That's why I'm sitting there like, yeah, do I believe a Republican man with an alcohol problem and a man who killed people in West Asia came back home and roughed up his girlfriend? Yeah, I believe that. What are you talking about? Of course. And so just for the fact that Kyle and Hassan and all these people turned around and were like, whoa, this one's credible. They were always credible. You just didn't like that it came in the package of a Republican.
Who was making the allegations. Also, the allegations were effectively, he's a bad boyfriend. This is not that. This is a much more extreme allegation is point number one. Point number two is she does have some corroborating evidence. And it's also, if we're being serious here, a Democrat who's making the allegation. But let me also just say real quick, if you're a Republican, I am not remotely interested in your Plattner take. Because you have nominated a guy 3 times who was accused of much worse and much more than Graham Plattner. You can shut the fuck up. That's point number one. Point number two is, if you are Neera Tanden, shut the fuck up. She's going after Plattner now as well. You worked for Bill Clinton. You worked for fucking Bill Clinton.
See how it's still about winning? See how it's still about, like, you have no room to talk? I hear that. And yet, Kyle Kulinski, see how these men are not embodied? They're not feeling it. They don't care about the rape victims. They're just like bummed. They're like, oh, this sucks, dude. Who's in the race now? They've totally ignored the fact that a woman has been raped. They're totally ignoring the fact that these women are coming forward with their abuse stories. Like, you're not even empathizing. You're not even engaging in how serious of a matter this is. Like, you're not seeing the systems at play here that put this man as the senator runner in the first place. Why was Graham the chosen candidate? Patriarchy, white supremacy. And by the way, Graham ran on a pro-military platform, basically. So yeah, he was anti the genocide. The bar is in hell. But because of that, they ignored everything. Like, come on, put it together.
Okay. Final thing is, we'll know the country is in a better place when people react with the same sort of moral outrage and condemnation to arming and funding genocide as they're reacting to this.
What? This is what I mean. All suffering is suffering. You cannot compare suffering. Listen to what he just said. Why are we acting like, which is worse, guys? Rape or genocide? They're both fucking bad. And for the record, where there is genocide, there is rape. You think no rape is happening when we know the IOF is raping Palestinians? You think Palestinians, because there are going to be rapists in every population, you think there aren't people getting raped because they're experiencing a genocide? You think women aren't absolutely at threat of sexual assault? This is what I'm saying. These men's brains are mush. They're absolute mush. They're not thinking about the real people, the people on the ground, the people who are in vulnerable situations, the people who are sleeping in tents, the people who have nothing to protect themselves. You want to talk about locking your doors? People are sleeping in tents. There's no door to lock. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, people are so fucking annoying. Like, people aren't even paying attention to how, like, what a horrible thing to say. To sit there and say, like, oh, maybe one day people care about genocide the way they care about rape. People don't care about either. That's kind of the point. Nobody cares about either.
No apology, no introspection, just whataboutism. Point 1, what about Republicans? What about Donald Trump? Point 2, what about Bill Clinton? Point 3, what about the genocide? Hey, Kyle, what about you bullying a victim of domestic violence and calling her a lying bitch with zero evidence? What about you forcing a rape victim to out herself in order to combat your misogynistic misinformation? And what about the fact that you can't even call it rape? You have to say grape like a fucking child because you don't want YouTube to demonetize your video where you finally admit that, okay, Plattner sucks. And here's Emma Viglin's take, which at least is closer to an apology than Kyle's.
Plattner and perhaps the campaign itself has violated the trust of many supporters. I would include myself in that.
You violated your audience by trusting a man with a reputation as bad as Plattner and playing defense for him every time something came out about him. That is the problem with these people with fucking microphones. You guys know you're one of the biggest shows. You know people depend on you for good coverage. And you guys played defense for this man time and time again, even though there was no fucking reason to do this. So they also owe their audience like she's playing victim right now, acting like you are not the thing between the candidate and us. Like, that's what I'm saying. Does nobody understand your fucking role in this game? You are supposed to be the communicator. You're supposed to be the person who tells everybody else what's up. You failed at your job. That should be what your job is. That's the point. People should be listening to you to get accurate information. And it was so obvious what the information should have been. Like, in real time, we are losing any credible sources for leftist content. Like, we need a new generation of actual leftist reporters, leftist journalists, actual people who are going to give us day-to-day understanding of the news through a leftist lens. Because obviously, Hassan's not doing it. The majority of reports not doing it. Kyle Kulinski's not doing it. Like, you're supposed to be the person.
However, obviously, I do feel a responsibility as a woman that, you know, perhaps, I don't know, I'm still thinking about this, but I believe in redemption and restorative justice, and that is what had driven me to support Plattner despite some of his past. But when we're talking about forcible rape and sexual assault, obviously, there is no excuse. And immediately, once I read the story, I knew that he had to drop out of the race. And so I'm sorry if there are any women in the audience that feel that I failed them. I take that super seriously. I carry that with me. And I'm sorry. So, you know, I still maintain that what was said in the...
No! Oh my God. Habibis, please, everybody needs to learn how to apologize. Everybody needs to learn how to apologize. But I still maintain, I stopped listening. Did I hear a but in your apology? Stop listening.
New York Times was not disqualifying, but what is alleged here...
Democracy Now! Is I think still one of the good ones with Amy. I still think Amy is one of the good ones. I still watch Democracy Now! I still watch Democracy Now! I think Amy's like my go-to girl because I just, you know what I mean?
Just absolutely is. And not that it...
Yeah, and apologize to the victims. Thank you, chat. Apologize to the women you discredited. Why aren't you apologizing to the victims, Emma? Don't just apologize to the women in your audience. Apologize to the women you discredited.
Should matter given what the details were and what the corroboration is. But this individual, this woman who is accusing him, supports his politics. And that is why she was reticent to come forward in the first place. And I'm sorry if myself or anybody, you know, I'm sorry if I contributed to that culture.
No, you did.
A little heads up if you ever want to try to apologize in a way that at least seems sincere. I'm sorry is great. I'm sorry if...
Yeah, I'm sorry, but... Oops.
Is not great. Yes, Emma, you did contribute to the culture that made it extremely difficult for a rape victim to come forward with her story. You got on camera and confidently told more than 2 million subscribers that a woman alleging domestic abuse by Graham Plattner was a lying paid shill. You and Sam Cedar and Kyle Kulinski and Mehdi Hassan and Ryan Grimm have spent the last 6 months mocking every criticism of Plattner as an Israeli disinformation conspiracy, warning that the only people who could possibly come forward with negative information are doing so to stop a progressive Democrat from getting into office. You inspired an army of viewers to spread the word, telling people who criticize Plattner that we must want Republicans or centrist Democrats to win because Plattner is the only progressive in the race. Let me remove that if for you, Emma. Yes, you are the reason that Rassikat did not want to come forward.
1,000 fucking percent.
You are the reason why she eventually had to come forward.
Yep.
And that should disgust you as much as it disgusts me. And all of you need to grapple with the fact that if Jenny Rassicot had been a conservative, or if she hadn't told a friend what happened, or any list of a number of other reasons why she wasn't a perfect victim, you would still be here calling her a lying bitch.
Exactly. A lying bitch. I want you to remember that the misogyny is rampant. And I'm telling you, listen, they got to get out of these bubbles. Listen, we all live in bubbles, but this online bubble is so consistently toxic. It is so consistently warping your brains. And I know people don't see it. You got to go meditate. You got to get out of the bubble. You got to do something for your own fucking mental health, because I promise you, you're not helping yourself or helping anybody else. When every day, all day, you're streaming, you're looking at the news, you got to take a fucking day off. You got to shut off your brain from the noise and meditate. Because then you come back and you're so busy to fight, you're so trying so hard to fight Republicans that you don't see the fire in your own house. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're just so and who suffers? This is why I say it's always going to be marginalized people that suffer. It's always going to be people who are already begging you for any sort of microphone or voice. This is why I say, guys, these people have millions of subscribers. They are literally rich because of these jobs. They have made good money for many, many years. And this is what they're doing with the power that you gave them. Now, TYT, and then we'll hear from Lindsay, who was recently interviewed as well by shitty Jake Tapper. Okay, this is horrible. Anna, I can't even tell you how awful this TYT segment is. I'm just going to show you this segment 11 minutes in, okay?
Defended Brett Kavanaugh when Christine Blasey Ford
they're talking about Lindsay.
Came forward with, I think, far more credible allegations against Kavanaugh, because there were several people she spoke to at the time of the...
Mind you, if I recall about the Kavanaugh situation, they were teenagers at the time. And it was many, many years ago. And though we absolutely defended that woman and we were there watching it live when it happened, and we support all victims against Kavanaugh, when she says it was more credible, we're talking about something that happened a few years ago or within the last 10 years ago versus something that happened 30 something years ago. They're all credible, but why are you playing this game about what's more credible? She dated Plattner. Lindsay dated Plattner as adults. They dated as adults. What is that? What are you talking about? What do you mean more credible?
Alleged rape attempt by Kavanaugh.
So this is the media's like 7th attempt or something to end Graham Plattner's campaign. If you think these are just, oh, well, he's so problematic, they're just organically popping up. That's not true at all. That is definitively not correct. There are groups who try to take out candidates. It is relatively normal, although it's never talked about in the press, because remember, the press doesn't do their own job. These groups do. And then the question is,
this is posted a day ago.
Who does the press choose to target? Who do they choose to write the stories about? Who do they choose to not write the stories about? But we're going to come back to the essence of this case in a second. Anna.
I just have so many thoughts about this, so bear with me as I go through them all, okay? I loathe horse race politics specifically because of this reason, because it places us in this unbearable position of having to adjudicate something that should have been adjudicated in a court of law if this actually took place. If someone entered my home and forcibly raped me, I would not allow the individual who forcibly raped me, that's violent, right, to remain in my home and sleep it off. But that is what she did.
Why are we forgetting that they knew each other? Why are we forgetting that they grew up in a similar town? They saw each other on Bumble. She had already known about him. Why are we forgetting that they know each other? Why is everyone acting like he was some stranger who came into her home and she didn't know him? This happens all the time with your brother, your father, your uncle, your grandfather, your best friend from high school, your boyfriend from college. This is literally what happens to rape victims all the time. It is somebody you know, somebody you have history with, somebody you love and have compassion for, and they take advantage of you. And then you have to be the bigger person to protect them, to love them, to be silent for them. And Anna is acting like, oh, so this is violent. So she let him stay at her house. You mean like every other rape story you've ever heard in your whole life? Because it's always like this? Yeah. This is so disgusting. By the way, I supported Anna when she came out and said she was assaulted by unhoused people. I said it happens. I believe you. I did believe her, because why wouldn't I believe her? Sure, a couple men on the street, a couple men in general, I believe you. Yeah, like men are touchy. You know, I've been followed by all kinds of men, not even unhoused men. Okay, I've been touched by men. I believe you. And that was the thing, is that Anna acts like this is an improbable situation or this is a crazy situation, but it's a very typical situation.
She alleges that he was so drunk that she didn't want to tell him to leave because he might harm someone on the road.
Hello? That's another thing, guys. He drove drunk. That's the thing that's even crazier too. People are like, well, what if he just thought it was consensual? Okay, well, what about driving drunk? Is that a problem too? It's like everyone's ignoring every part of the detailed story. They knew each other. They had a history. She said, don't come over. He came over. He drove drunk. There's so many layers to this story.
He just forcibly raped you, right? Call the cops. Or more importantly, get the hell out of the house. But she did neither one of those things. Neither one of those things.
Yeah, so look, again, I hate the situation we're in where we have to try to adjudicate this with not enough evidence. Could it be that she's telling the truth? Of course it could be. Now, guys, if it's true, then it's a huge problem, right? But we don't know for sure that it's true. But in a situation like this, even if you say you're...
Guys, this is what I'm saying about victim blaming. It comes so naturally to people, but that's what you were doing in my chat the other day. And I'm glad I caught it. We're going to talk about it because people in the chat were on my ass. You don't even know you're doing it. What do you mean she didn't lock her door? What do you mean she didn't do this? What do you mean she didn't leave the house? What do you mean she didn't call the cops? This is why I say watch your fucking mouth. Okay? And you better believe I'm going to stop you in your tracks if I see it in my chat. Watch your fucking mouth because you've been so just brainwashed by patriarchy and victim blaming. You don't even know you're doing it.
We're not sure that it's true, that's it. People come and take your head off. Because they say once we made an allegation, it's over. You're not allowed to object to the allegation. But wait a minute. The thing that caught my attention here, and again, Mika Brzezinski also saying this doesn't look right at all, this is not enough to publish a piece, gives you a sense of we're not making this up, guys, and we're not doing it because we're biased. Look at the fact pattern here. So the thing that caught my eye, Anna, was on the therapist. Because
yes, the therapist didn't want to talk to the press, by the way.
Yeah, the Politico kept saying, well, she says she talked to the therapist, and the therapist does not acknowledge it, but says that they do have a relationship. No, wait.
Let's be totally accurate, okay?
Yeah.
The therapist acknowledged that she spoke to her recently about what allegedly happened, but did not want to issue a statement to Politico.
Yeah.
Okay, whoa, shocking. You're not even believing the victim. The therapist certainly doesn't want to get involved. Now, let's bring this around, okay? To really fast, this clip here. So this is my stream the other day. Okay, this was the other day when we watched Jenny tell her story initially. Just this section here.
Then he came in. He just came into my house. It was unlocked. I live in an area where you don't usually have to lock your doors. I do now.
So she lost a sense of safety. This is typical. I also grew up in neighborhoods where I didn't have to lock my doors or worry about it because generally it would be very weird. You also have neighbors who watch your house. The neighbors would notice if a car was in the driveway. Like, there's a lot of layers to his safety that she no longer has. She's been robbed of that safety, right? But look at my chat on the right side of the screen. Actually, you're probably gonna have a hard time seeing it because you're talking right now, but I'll tell you what it says.
He came in and I realized, okay, he didn't listen. He's in my home. And I was laying
So then person says, girl.
on the couch. It was probably pretty late at night.
Which is a judgment, I assume, of not locking your doors. I'm not gonna shame her for not locking her doors. I also, this is past Brittany talking, didn't lock my doors for most of my life. Okay? I don't want to hear anybody shame her for not locking her door. I also grew up in a very safe neighborhood and did not have to lock my doors for a majority of my life. I can't tell you how many times I would go to sleep without ever thinking about locking my door because I didn't have to. Okay? That's a very common thing and a lot of bubbles. And it sucks when you can no longer do that because it's really meaningful to grow up in an environment that is so safe you don't have to lock your doors. Pausing, and I do believe we should fight for a world, this is President Brittany talking, where everybody gets that privilege, where everybody has the privilege to keep their doors unlocked. And by the way, this isn't just like a race or gendered thing, because I did get some pushback from people in that chat that day who was like, as a person of color, like I've never had this privilege, but there are 8 billion people on the planet and there are neighborhoods. Are you telling me there's no such thing as a safe Black neighborhood? I hope you wouldn't. I don't think that's true. I refuse to believe that's true. And also like that feels impossible. So like, that's the same thing as saying like, I'm having this experience and like, I've never had this privilege. Yeah, but when you speak and you say this, you're judging her. You're saying you have to do everything possible to keep yourself safe, right? So then I got comments from people saying like, as a Kiwi, the idea of not locking your door is so weird to me. It really highlights the social differences between countries. Absolutely, right? Chad says, this person says, I don't think mentioning disbelief at the action is victim blaming. Yes, people who are victim blame may latch onto it, but victim blamers are going to latch onto whatever they can find. It is not my responsibility to censor or mute every opinion and thought I have, just in case someone decides to use that thought to cause harm. Unless that idea, the idea in itself was harmful. Well, I guess Anna doesn't, Anna expressing if you were really raped, why didn't you call the cops? Then I guess that's not victim blaming. Because that's what you're saying. You're saying like, if you were really raped, you'd call the cops. If you cared about your safety, you lock your door. That is victim blaming. So yes, expressing it in this moment as a moment of judgment. And even my chat continued to say like, oh, I had to close my mouth. I had to like watch what I said. Yeah, because like you are doing this thing where it's like, oh my God, you didn't lock your doors. So imagine your friend just came to you and said, bro, I was raped. He came through my front door. I didn't lock my door. And they go, oh my God, you forgot to lock your door. You fucking stupid, you dumb bitch. Like that's what you're saying. Whether you want to accept it or not, that is what you're saying. You're saying you should have known better. And what is that except victim blaming? Okay, this person said victim blaming is for losers. Love that. And then, or they said get the victim blamers. And then, this person says as a response, hold on, let me pull it up for you. Leaving the door unlocked is bonkers. I don't know if you live in the safest area. I don't care if you live in the safest area on earth. You're still rolling the dice. Hold on, let me move it a little bit so you can see it better. They said, not blaming any victims, but we live in a world with nefarious people and you should do what's in your power to keep yourself safe from would-be criminals. Locking the door behind you takes 2 seconds. See? Maine has 100 break-ins per 100,000 residents. Rare, but not impossible that you will be caught in the middle of a home invasion situation and could have been entirely avoided. Everyone at some inherent level understands the concept of protecting yourself and property from criminals, even though if they harmed or robbed you. He wasn't a criminal. You guys are acting like if he had shown up and knocked on the door, she wouldn't have let him in. You act like they don't know each other. You act like they're not friends. You act like they're not lovers. You act like they weren't in a situation. You act like if he wouldn't have shown up, he would have been like, Jenny, let me in. And she'd be like, Graham, go home. He was like, I'm too drunk, let me in. She'd be like, okay. And she would have let him in anyways. You act like locking the door would have changed the fact that Graham Plattner knew Jenny. He would have come into her house, whether it was locked or not locked. Read the context of the room. Okay? Read the context of the situation. That's what I'm trying to say matters. So when you say, I can't believe she didn't lock her door, it wouldn't have mattered. She would have let him in. They know each other. I can't even tell you how many of my friends have come to my house unprompted in the middle of the night. I'm like, oh, hey, bro, come on in. Not drunk. Oh, actually, one guy did show up to my house drunk and I sent him, I didn't even know what to do. I was like, you need to call someone to come pick you up. I was so upset because I was like, don't come into my house. I did not let him into my house. I was sleeping at someone else's house at the time. I was staying with a friend, but I hated situations like that. Stop putting people in those situations. That's what I'm saying. People suck. But like that guy, I didn't even know. I knew him from work. He wasn't even a real friend. But she knew Graham. Sorry, I don't know why I brought that up. But Graham, she knows. Graham, she knows. It's different, okay? I would have let a stranger in my house, but Graham wasn't a stranger to her. Okay, this person said, POC here, who has never known the security of leaving my door unlocked. It's a wild to say our disbelief is victim blaming when literally it's just a difference of lived experience being expressed. Of course, we should all have the security of not locking our doors. It isn't her fault for not locking her door. Blowing this out of context, otherwise great points, Planner always sucks. I said, hey, I can expand on stream, but it's not a universal experience. I gave an example of a black man who didn't lock his door and was blamed for it. Again, there are 8 billion people on earth. We're all having different community experiences. It was the wrong time to have that convo, and given the context, didn't relate to the topic. I know people are hurting and we need to leave room for people to share that pain. This just wasn't it, which is true, guys. I hear your pain and I think it's valid and we should talk about it. We should talk about why everyone deserves a safe neighborhood to live in where they could leave their doors unlocked if they wanted to. I wish everyone could have that. Many people have it. Not all people have it, right? Okay. I said, I know people are hurting. We need to leave room for those people to share that pain. This just wasn't it. Also, some chatters admitted it came from a place of judgment. So we need to accept that victim blaming is ingrained in us and we need to unlearn it. We are all complicit in how the world works. This person said, sounding a bit like Ron Burgundy, telling me you don't speak Spanish here. LOL. Sorry, missed my point, but not my job to explain. Oh, well. Look, I am all for it is not my job to educate you, but it is not I am taking it upon myself to educate you about rape. So you were trying to educate me about growing up POC in a neighborhood where you felt unsafe. And I'm trying to educate you on being a woman in a neighborhood where she felt safe enough to keep her doors unlocked only to have that stolen from her by a friend. I am trying to educate you on what it's like to have a trusted relationship with your neighborhood, a high trust environment, trusting a friend only to be betrayed so viciously in the worst way possible. Right? And now she said, I have to lock my doors. So here you are saying, I'm not going to educate you, but here I am, I'll educate you. No problem. I'll do it. You're wrong. You're wrong to make this about you in a moment where it has nothing to do with you. Share your disbelief in a private text message, not online where people can see you and start thinking, yeah, you know what? If she really didn't want to be raped, she should have locked her doors. Because that's exactly the mindset. It's like when white people hear about encounters with black people and the cops, and they think you must have done something to piss off the cops. Because I'm a white person and I've never had that problem with the cops. You guys must be doing something to piss off the cops, right? No, it's called racism. Like, that's the problem. We have to remember, as marginalized people, we have to remember as minorities, we're all having different experiences, and it's called the intersection of. There's an intersection here. There's something at play here. Okay, so again, like, I understand your intuition, your instinct, your desire to say, hey, I've never had this experience. And look, I'm devastated for you for not having the experience of a safe enough neighborhood. That kills me. And, okay, yes, every neighborhood is different. I've lived in neighborhoods where I would never leave my door unlocked. 100% I've lived in those neighborhoods, okay? I've lived in neighborhoods where I didn't even bother to lock my door, okay? 100%. I've lived in both kinds of places. But in this moment, while I'm hearing from this rape victim, I wouldn't say, oh, she should move to a place where she has to lock her door so she can make sure she locks it next time. I mean, she should move to a more dangerous neighborhood, guys, so she can always keep her door locked. She lives in a safe neighborhood. God forbid the woman utilize the safety. Only to be betrayed by who? Again, not a stranger, someone she knew. Someone she knew. Okay, so I hear you. Pain is valid. There are so many layers to this. I want people to know there is a time and a place for this conversation. And it doesn't matter if your door is unlocked. It doesn't matter if you forgot to lock your car. It doesn't matter. We shouldn't have to live in a society where people take advantage of that. We need to, and then, now guys, not only take advantage of that, but run for senator, run for office, run for power, run for president, run for mayor. Remember, Graham Planner is running for power. He's saying, give power to me. And we are sitting here acting like this isn't connected to exactly the entitlement he felt that night when he took advantage of Jenny, when he mistreated Lindsay, when he took advantage of this third victim we don't even know yet. Please put on your big kid thinking caps and remember that this is so fucking serious. This man is asking for fucking power. And so easily you give him every excuse to earn it because the same people that said, well, maybe he was drunk, but he didn't realize she didn't consent because maybe he read it as consent because he was drunk. Maybe he read it as consent because her door was unlocked. I got a lot of those comments and I deleted them. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Like, be very careful about these narratives that you, like, reflexively, it's okay if you posted it and you feel bad, delete the messages, or really just learn from this situation. You're not an evil person because you had a normal, like, oh, I would have locked my door. Okay, it's nice. But she didn't. And it wouldn't have mattered if she did. Okay? And that's the point. Now, let's hear from Lindsay. This is a new interview. I do not know what's up with CNN. God knows they make enough money. I don't know why their audio couldn't be better. It's horrible audio, but I want to hear from her as well because I know people used her story to discount Jenny's because Lindsay's a Republican, but she was still a person who dated Graham Plattner. She dated him.
You already knew Jenny's story.
Yes.
But what was your reaction to her telling her story yesterday?
I'm so proud of her. I was so proud of her, and I know how hard this has been for her, but I also know that she deserved that vindication. She deserved to come out and actually tell her full story because the way that it was told before, or the parts that were left out before, had left her vulnerable to a lot of attacks.
Ingling, thank you so much for Ingling. Yeah, thank you so much for the super chat. It says, man, being drunk is never an excuse, never an excuse.
She did not deserve, and she should have been protected the whole time. It's unfortunate that she had to tell her story this way, that she should have never had to come out with her name and her face. She should have been able to tell the story anonymously, in my opinion. But I'm proud of her for doing it. And I didn't know until the story came out that she had said that I was, an inspiration, or one of the reasons that she decided to tell her story. I really didn't know that that was the case until I read it in Politico. And it means a lot that she's blowing her life up. I blew my life up. And I think she saw that happen to me, and she saw the attacks that I faced. How do you thank someone for something like that? She took a lot of courage, and she didn't have to ever talk about this. And I think it's just, I'm very grateful that she did.
She said one of the reasons that she came forward
I thought that was really nice.
was because, so more than a month ago, the New York Times published a story about you and about Jenny and about another woman, and neither of you told everything.
Right.
There were things that had happened that neither of you wanted to be on the record saying.
Right.
Very private, personal things.
Yeah.
There was a lot in the story about how you are a conservative Republican.
Right.
After the CNN.com story, after the Politico story, after the CNN interview, lots of Democrats withdrew their endorsements. Senator Gallego, Ro Khanna, Senator Elizabeth Warren, all came out and said, no, he needs to drop out, or I'm withdrawing my endorsement. What did you think of that?
As much as I'm grateful and I'm glad, and I hope that finally this was enough, finally, there is also that feeling of pain of like, but my accusations weren't enough, like our story. And again, I never thought that I was going to be the lone voice in that story. I really thought that mine was going to be the lesser of the stories, that mine was going to be like not a footnote.
Because remember, they did overpromise that they told the girls, like, oh, we have all these stories, we need to come together. Which, by the way, guys, like anytime I've ever dealt with trying to take down a predator or trying to call people out or trying to report people, you do have to get all the people together. And it's really hard because everyone's so terrified, right? I tell that story in high school all the time where I noticed a teacher was like molesting my friends. And I was like, hey, he can't touch you like that. And I tried to gather the girls together, but just as we were about to go to the principal's office, they just got scared. It was like 6 different girls. They're like, Brittany, I can't. 2 years later, when I had graduated high school already, he was in prison for taking photos of the girls, for molesting students, for having secret videotapes and pictures and upskirt photos. It was horrible. But I wasn't one of the victims, so I couldn't go forward because I didn't have a personal story. But I knew because I had seen it in class. I had watched it happen. And remember, we're kids. We're like 16 years old. We're literally children trying to figure out how to do adult things. I think at the time, if I could go back, I'd tell an adult. I just didn't know who to tell. I didn't know which adult to trust, which is exactly the problem. In that moment, 7 of us, we didn't know one adult to trust. And that was the bigger problem. Adults need to create a space for young people to come forward so they can be the trusted adult. But we thought, well, if this teacher's doing it, maybe the other teachers know and they're in on it. Or like we weren't sure, right? Horrible.
But like my story was meant to bolster the other stories that were being told. And
Jenny's story.
Is
rape.
Yes, and I had believed until the publication that was going to be like the central focus of the piece. And so it blindsided me, but I think the biggest betrayal after that piece came out was feeling like I had been, they wouldn't even use the word abuse. A lot of people just kept saying, oh, mistreatment, or, no one was describing.
It was domestic violence.
And it was intimate partner violence, and it was domestic abuse. And those are words that I've never felt comfortable. I've never really talked about myself I've never called myself a victim. I don't like using that kind of language.
So one of the first things that came out about Graham Plattner was that
By the way, that's not just unique to Republicans or conservatives. A lot of people don't want to call themselves a victim. A lot of people really struggle with that narrative, no matter their political affiliation, because it can feel very humiliating because of the way society talks about victims. Because remember, a man who loses a fight, his friends will buy him a beer for trying. A woman who loses a fight against a rapist is not bought a beer. We don't talk about it. It's shush. The conversations aren't had. There's nothing to brag about. You lost a fight and you got raped. Versus you lost a fight, but you came out with a broken nose and some bruises and cuts. You're a man, So nobody, regardless of background, people typically don't want to even associate with that word because it feels disempowering. Like it feels like you're taking away my power. That's why it's so powerful when you go to therapy and you really unpack and you realize like, no, I was a victim. And there's a new sense of power that comes from realizing like, oh, I was hurt. And then there's the healing process of no, like you don't have to identify as a victim for the rest of your life. You can just say, in that moment of time, for that situation, I was victimized. It doesn't make you a victim for the rest of your life, but to validate yourself, to validate your past self and say, no, you were victimized is so powerful.
he had a Totenkopf, an SS tattoo on his chest, and he denied knowing that that's what it was.
Right.
Oh, please.
And that's not true.
No.
Because he called it that when you guys were dating.
Yeah. I never knew what that word was. I didn't even know how to spell it correctly when I said he's got a Nazi tattoo. I had to look it up on the ADF website, and I had no idea what it was. And I had no photographic evidence of it. So for the first 2 months after, like from that, everyone talks about the text from August, we were looking for pictures. We were going back through, trying to find old pictures. So if I'm fabricating this story, I'm doing it without even having a photo of this tattoo that I like. Like, that's the crazy part that I think people are missing.
Let's go back to June, to the New York Times story. He just flatly denied anything physical. Yeah. He said he was a bad boyfriend, but he flatly denied anything physical and said anything, and this did seem aimed at you.
Yeah.
Anything to the contrary.
I cannot believe CNN's audio engineers have jobs. Fire them all. Is it AI? Is AI in charge of their audio? I cannot believe their mixing is so bad. Why is it coming in one ear and out the other? I've got the sound in both of my ears going. I cannot believe this is happening twice with interviews about victims. Are they sabotaging these victims on purpose? I promise you, it's like CNN is doing this on purpose so these women's interviews don't get seen. Both of their interviews, terrible audio. Hello? YouTubers are better at this than you.
It was politically motivated.
Yeah.
And he said that on MS Now, and that
Well, it worked.
Well, you're right. It did seem to have worked. The Democratic Party just kind of moved on.
Yeah, like, oh, it's just politically motivated, and then that's it. Like, everybody just kind of moved on from the story after that.
But he was lying, right?
And
so when he said,
Chad said, who was her abuser? Graham Plattner. This is the Republican woman Graham Plattner dated. Okay, before he had a change of heart and he became a Democrat, before he became a liberal. Okay. In his adult years, after he had already done tours, after he already had his Nazi tattoo, after, he dated this conservative woman. Okay. And then boom, they broke up. And then you know what I'm saying? This is why when people are like, it was way in his past, this was years ago. He newly married his recent wife and cheated on her with like 5-6 different people. Hello?
when he said,
yeah.
He's a bad boyfriend, but there's no physicality.
Oh, that's a lie. And I think the thing that a lot of people, and I'm hoping more people will come forward at least saying this, is he was known for being very rough with people. I mean, like, he apologized sober the next day on many of these occasions. So with me. And so when he, like, yes, I know there were times when he was blackout drunk that he would say, oh, I don't remember that. But then days later, he would come back and details would slip out. And he'd say, well, that was before or something. And I'd catch him in a lie. And it would be like, wait, so you do remember. You weren't blackout drunk. But on rare occasions when he'd be, the next...
I think people don't know what blackout drunk can mean. You can be blackout drunk and still have vivid memories or some ideas or some version. It just means it could just mean you're intoxicated to the point where you can't stand, or blackout drunk. I don't think I understand. I think from my understanding, and even identifying as blackout drunk, like it just depends. Like some people remember, some people it's not, you maybe lose moments, but that's the thing is like, that's why he has a problem with alcohol. If every time you do something bad, you use alcohol as the excuse, you have a fucking problem. And if you're not going to get sober and work on it, you know what I mean? So it's different for everyone's brains. And also everyone's individual brain will have a different reaction to alcohol. It's why some people can drink a little bit and get totally drunk. And some people can drink so much and not even get drunk. So again, when we have conversations about this, the language we're using is putting an image in our head of what she means, but it could mean many things.
Stay very apologetic. Very contrite. Not, oh, I don't remember doing that, but I'm sorry if I did that. It was, I remember doing.
Hold on. Chad says, Brittany, I'm not going to lie, I'm having serious issues giving room for someone who actively wants to harm people, like having immigrants in my family have to keep their head down because of her. In moments like this, and this is very difficult, so I'll be the adult in the room because that's my goal. We have to recognize that the world is full of a majority of very conservative people, all of whom are going to be victims of rape, assault, misogyny, racism, all of the bad things. They're going to be scammed, taken advantage of, right? This is why I say, and this is why I kind of been pushing back a little bit at my audience, because there's no way your parents aren't racist. There's no fucking way your parents aren't bigoted. What is your parents' issue? I want to go for your mom and dad. The way we're never supposed to go for people's parents, because I look at her like I look at my parents. Except I look at her the way I look at anyone who's conservative. Because is it, like, I just refuse to believe you got lucky, where all of you got so lucky you had perfect progressive parents. Because don't think so. So again, when we have conversations about, like, it's hard to have empathy for her, imagine it was your mother. Because my mother didn't deserve to be treated the way she was in her first marriage, regardless of her politics. She didn't deserve to be hit or assaulted or wounded or abused. It doesn't matter who she votes for. No man should have put hands on my mom. And no man should put hands on Lindsay. And no man should have put hands on Jenny. And no man should have put hands on any of us. Okay? So you might not be able to have the empathy, but there is no way there's not somebody in your family that is fucked up and voted MAGA, or is conservative or transphobic or Christian or something that you wouldn't want to fucking fight for if something happened to them. That's how I think about it. Because there is no way we all grow up in this shitty fucking world and we're all not being hurt by it. This is why we want to encourage women out of conservatism into a better perspective. But look what we're offering them. Hey, leave Trump and come to Graham Plattner? Gross. Leave Trump and come to Bill Clinton? Gross. Leave Trump and come to Hassan Piker, I guess. Who, Destiny? Vosh? Who are these great fucking men? These conservative women are leaving everything they've ever known for. Okay? So remember, like, you're not exactly offering them a better option here. So they're going to stick to what they knew and what they were raised with and what they believe and what's connected to their faith and what's connected to their community, and think, if I can just if I can just make it, if I can just, this is like Lauren Southern coming out about her rape and Andrew Tate. I believe Lauren Southern was raped by Andrew Tate. That's very believable, right? He's openly bragged about raping children. I 100% believe her. The issue is that when she came out, her hope was to transform the Republican Party instead of abandoning it altogether, because she's still fighting her own fucking bigotry. She's still racist. She still has problems. That doesn't make her less of a rape victim. She's still a rape victim. So for this section, for this context, for this thing, deeply empathetic. For everything else, they're just as responsible. She's accountable, separate from this rape, for all of the harm she's done and the work that she's done. But she is not responsible for her rape. That's how I look at it. I hope that helps.
Doing that, and I'm sorry, I was in a blackout drunk situation.
He acknowledged that he did it, knew that he did it, and apologized.
Yes.
Sober.
Sober.
When he was sober.
Yes.
This is a very painful process and has been for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Continues to be. But it's important because you want the voters to know about him. What do you want them to know?
I think they know now. They needed to know the truth. They needed to know, because these things translate. It's not like the things that he does in private in his relationships with women, the things.
Look, I want her to put that into, listen, I've had the same conversation with my parents or with conservative women in my family. They'll say, the way Bill Clinton cheated on Hillary and took advantage of Monica Lewinsky, he'll do that to the American people. But they won't extend that to Trump. That cognitive dissonance is the problem. That's a lack of introspection. It is a lack of deconstruction. It is a lack of really being honest with yourself, right? It's not a mental illness. It is the part of being a person on the planet. It's why it's so hard to be a good person. They can't, because she, you're probably thinking, but doesn't she support Trump? They don't get it. They can't, their brain isn't doing it. Their brain isn't doing it. They're not having the embodied experience. This is why I wanted to talk about having embodied leftist values, because what's Kyle Clancy's excuse? What's Hassan's excuse? What are all these men's excuses for the ways that they have talked the way they have about women, been misogynistic, engaged with it recently, discounted victims? If they're supposed to be on the good side and they can't do it, why are we expecting them to do it? Why would you expect people that you think are stupid, brainwashed, a part of a cult, to be better than the leftist men you've made millionaires and won't even do it themselves? Explain that to me. Why in the world would it be easier for her in her position to be introspective than these men who are supposed to know better? Or the women like Emma or like Anna Kasparian. What was supposed to be? Why would it be harder for them? Because we're animals on a planet. We're having a biological experience. We need to have a deeper relationship with our biological experience. It is very hard to be a good person. It is very, very hard. Okay? I've got plenty of stories about myself where I cannot believe I took that position. I cannot believe I said that out loud. I'm telling you, it's very hard to be a good person. So be compassionate, be patient, take a deep breath, and try to be less bad every day.
That he has done to women, coercive control, lying, deception, abuse, and really horrible things that we know about him. We know that you can't be that way in private and not have it translate into how you would govern or how you would, when you're put in a position of power. And I think it terrifies me to think of him having any type of power politically, because what is he going to do with the women in his office? How is he going to manipulate? How is he going to deceive? When I saw him lying about the Nazi tattoo, that was the first kind of chip in my armor where I was like, I can't let him continue to lie like this. I couldn't watch him continue to just deceive people and run this fantasy that he's this changed person that had this dark past, when really he's doing these things to this day. I mean, Jenny's accusations are only a few years old, so we know that he's continued to do this to women.
Right.
One of the things that was so striking about what Jenny told me yesterday is, after, according to her, he raped her, he passed out. The next morning, according to her, he didn't seem to remember anything. She had said, you don't remember what happened last night. What happened last night was not okay.
He knew.
But he didn't ask her what happened.
Nope, because he didn't want it. That rang true to me too. Yeah.
And then a few weeks later, after she learned she wasn't pregnant, because he had not used protection, also against her wishes.
Yeah.
She reached out to him again, told him she wasn't pregnant, reiterated that what happened was not okay. And again, he read it and didn't ask what happened.
Because he knew. And I think that's the thing that, and also I don't want to overemphasize this, but this is a man who is so hostile to the feelings of women, and he is disgusted by any show of emotion. Anytime that I ever cried, anytime that I ever tried to appeal to him but would start crying, I found
Guys, he recently cheated on his wife. He does not care about women. He's a serial abuser. This is why I say cheating is abusive. In most situations, in almost every situation, cheating will be abusive. You're hiding things from your partner. You're engaging with other people against their consent. You're sneaking around. He is a serial fucking abuser.
Myself having to like harden myself or not cry. And he would only respond to like toughness or like masculine energy, basically, of just like, I'm not gonna, he would say, don't bring emotions, or don't try to manipulate me, or like he feels like, or anytime that I confronted him about any kind of deception or cheating or anything, which was often, it was,
what was that?
Anytime that I confronted him about any kind of deception or cheating or anything.
Because he's a serial cheater. He's a serial abuser.
Which was often, it was dismissed as just me being a woman and me being like, and just the callousness and hostility that he had toward any kind of emotion like that. The abuse that I suffered has impacted, like the ripple effects were huge. He isolated me from friendships that I've now, this situation, I will say, something good that has come out of this is I've reconciled with friends that I had become estranged from because they've reached out and remembered, like, he isolated you from us. You weren't allowed to be friends with us because he didn't want you going to certain hill parties that he wasn't invited to, or what he was really controlling of my movements. And so it was, it has been really vindicating, or not vindicating.
No, validating.
Good has come out of this, that I have reconciled with or reconnected with different friends and people who are like, oh my God, we wish that we had known the extent of what you were going through at that time.
Guys, because Chad says, I think it's important to acknowledge and hold her accountable to how she treats victims of abuse. Yeah, after we get her help for her rape. This is the thing. You can't hold people accountable for what they've done at the same time you're being empathetic about their rape. You have to give people, like, this is the dilemma we're having, is healing is a part of the process of accountability. People who are not healed cannot take accountability because they don't know what they're doing. They have their justifications. You have to seek healing, and that's the part of accountability. Like, you have to do the work. You have to go to therapy and deconstruct and unlearn and recognize, and only then can you be held accountable, because, like, otherwise you're just a mob with pitchforks and torches. Which we're not going to burn the witches at the stake. We're not going to take little girls and women and burn them at the stake again. And that's what some of you sound like. Not all of you in chat, but sometimes I think you guys forget. They did not burn witches. They burned little girls and women. And I just want you to remember that. Okay? Remember this when you seek out punishment. Remember when you seek out justice. That if your justice is violent, if your justice is torture, you're no better. You can't be. And you have to let go of the attachment that people will get better. Girlies, we've been on this planet a long time. There's billions of us, and this is the state of the world. We are not hot shit. We are just shit. And again, you have to stop giving people so much credit, including yourselves. Okay? Including yourselves. We have to be less bad every day for this reason alone. Because we're not. Look at us. Look how fucked up the whole world is, bro. And then we're sitting here like, oh, well, what? Like, let's have some humility in this process.
But it explains a lot to them now. But also my behavior after that relationship and other relationships moving forward, and the ways I want to protect my daughters, I want to abuse-proof them, and I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to figure it out. And I'm talking to Cheyenne and other people about, like, how are we going to make
You can't abuse-proof anybody. Okay? You can't actually do that.
How I'm going to do it. Relationships moving forward, and the ways I want to protect my daughters, I want to abuse-proof them.
You can't. That's the problem. That's the hardest part of existence. You cannot ever protect your kids from rape or abuse. You can only do your best to mitigate the possibility. And even then, you cannot do it. If somebody really wants to, they're going to find a way. If the wrong people, and this is the hardest part about bringing a baby into the universe, every time you bring a baby into that universe, you're risking the chance of that child being raped, murdered, tortured to death. And the irony is, this is why I say you cannot advocate for the torture of other people. You're just advocating to torture somebody's child. That's all you're doing. We bring this back to the children, right? Like, we bring this back to the children. We have to remember that at the end of the day, we have to think about why we believe in abolishing prisons, why we want to help people live a dignified life, even if they haven't shown dignity to other people. And we have to remember that in order for someone to be punished through torture, somebody has to be the torturer, and then somebody has to go home and hug their kids with those hands and touch their lover with those hands and eat food with those hands and pray with those hands. And I just don't see how you're supposed to do that and think you're a good person.
And I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to figure it out. And
You'll
I'm
figure it out.
talking to Cheyenne and other people about like, how are we going to make sure that this generation, I've got 2 little girls. It's another reason that I decided to tell this story is I will be damned if this ever happens to them. And if they ever find themselves in a relationship and they don't feel like they can call me and tell me.
Exactly.
immediately. And I didn't feel like I could. And I not only didn't feel like I could tell anyone what was going on, I protected him.
When Jenny told her story, what, if anything, aligned with your experiences?
The eyes.
Yeah.
The dead eyes, where you couldn't hear your protests?
I just know exactly what that looks like. I know exactly what it looks like, and that is something that I feel like people need to understand. Is it was almost like looking at like a pit bull, where it's nothing, like, but not just nothing, but like a capacity for violence, and you see it, and you know it's there, and it's terrifying. And but also, yeah, a deafness to anything that
Consent?
Yes, like this is going to happen, and I think. That was the hardest part. Oh God, I'm sorry.
Jenny also talked about unprotected sex as something.
Okay, Cheddar, you're doing it again. And I don't know, like literally, if you're not getting what's happening, but you're doing this thing. You're like, you see, she's trying to frame it as soon as I saw him lie about the Nazi tattoo. Ma'am, there are Nazis in your party you support. You don't care about the tattoo. I feel like you don't hang out with conservatives. Do you know anyone in MAGA? Do you know any conservative? Have you ever dealt with a person who is so genuinely ignorant, who like in one side of their mouth says they hate Nazis and the other side of their mouth goes, it can't be a Nazi tattoo? Like I've literally hung out with conservatives my whole life. They are genuinely cognitive dissonance. It is a genuine experience of one side of their mouth and their other. I don't know how to tell you this. Like not everything is a manipulation tool. People literally, that's their experience in their brain. I'm telling you right now, it doesn't matter if she's conniving and lying. He abused her, right? It doesn't matter what she's saying. You're nitpicking this victim because you're distracting. You keep discounting her. You are using rhetoric, which we don't care about. We all agree. She's a shit person for engaging in Republican politics. What does that have to do with her abuse? What does that have to do about Plattner being held accountable? That's what I'm saying. I'm saying it doesn't matter. And you keep bringing it up in my chat. You are victim blaming. You don't even know it. You don't even know you're doing it because you've been so trained by it, because you're so focused on seeing her as an op or seeing her as this. Who cares what she is? I don't care if she's secret 4D chessing the situation. If it happened, it happened. If it happened and she's using it for political power, I don't give a fuck. Because right now it's about holding people on, quote, our side of the aisle accountable, regardless if she holds her side accountable. Because we're not supposed to be like them. We're supposed to be better than them, but we're not, are we? Because we don't want to hold abusers accountable because God forbid we lose a fucking race. This is a miracle in many ways that Graham Plattner stepped down, but he knows it's coming. That's what I'm saying. Like it is almost like disgusting how it took this long for us to do the right thing. So stop focusing on her politics. We know. And focus on the fact that a man asked for your vote, he asked you for power, and everyone almost gave it to him. Because you didn't want to believe this woman, because you hated that she was a Republican. Remember that. Remember that is ultimately what kept people blind. Why don't people do the right thing? Because you're worried that she's a Republican. Focus. Focus on the man who expressed who confessed with his own lips the bullshit that he has done.
She didn't want to happen that he.
Oops. Why am I blue? Oh my God, did my camera die? What the fuck? Am I here? Oh my God, what is happening? Oh my God, what is happening? I'm blue. I'm blue, da boo dee da boo. I don't know what's happening. Oh my God. Hold on. Hold on. Okay, well, the stream was like, we need a little humor. We're like getting pretty intense. Like, where's the humor? You know what I mean? There you go. There's that humor. And I just want to say, like, again, you are more mad at her for being a Republican who is an abuse victim then I feel like we have heat for the people on our side who told us to ignore the Nazi tattoo, ignore Blackwater, ignore his time in the military, ignore. Bernie Sanders deserves more fucking heat than this woman will ever deserve. I don't expect Republicans to be good people, but I certainly expect people who say they are to be better ones. So again, I don't expect anything from her. But it's interesting how much more we expect of this woman than we do of our own Democratic leaders who put and endorsed this man and put him in power. So interesting how it always ends up being more responsible for the victim and the woman to take all the brunt than the leaders who put him in any position of power.
You made happen. Is that something you experienced?
Yeah. So that was something that was really, I think, the worst and most violating part. This was a relationship that went on and on and on, and that even after my roommates and people were like, this has to stop, then it continued in secret, where we continued to see each other even after I had told people like, no, I'm really done, like we're really broken up this time, like I'm not. They'd be like, are you sure? And then, you know, that it's humiliating.
Ugh, been there, done that, girl.
It is embarrassing that I continue to go back despite
But a lot
abuse
of it, what you were motivated by was trying to protect him.
I was trying to help him, yeah.
You've shared so much with us today, and
Been there, done that, girly.
I really respect it.
This is the problem. I've been there, done that, on again, off again, toxic boyfriends. People have told us like, oh my God, Brittany, please say you're breaking up. And I'm like, yeah, we're broken up. But then he comes back and he's like, please help me. I love you. Let's be together. And you're like, okay, well, maybe I can't. This is what I'm saying. Now look at this. This is the Washington Post. Ex-girlfriend of Graham Plattner says he removed condoms without consent during sex. The campaign for the Democratic Senate candidate in Maine called the allegation categorically false and politically motivated. An ex-girlfriend and embattled Senate candidate Graham Plattner told the Washington Post that he repeatedly removed protection without her consent when they were having sex. This is called stealthing. Lindsay Fifield, who said she dated Plattner, that's who we just watched, from 2013 to 2015 in D.C., has previously accused him of physical abuse. She, said that she told Plattner on multiple occasions he had to wear condoms during sex because she was not on birth control. He would pull condoms off, she said in an interview. He would do it in a sneaky way. He wouldn't tell me. That is literally called stealthing. We had a whole discussion about it on the internet like 6 years ago. I don't remember. Yes, stealthing is rape. Yes, it is unconsensual. It is absolutely disgusting. And it should absolutely be considered some variation of either socially a crime, like societally, or we can talk about the law later. But societally speaking, absolutely a violation of consent. Absolutely a no-go. Like withholding birth control, sneaking off a condom, absolutely not. So we have to think about this. Again, this is purposeful behavior. So what happens is you're having sex and a person puts on a condom and you go, okay, cool, you have a condom on. You start having sex and in the middle of position switching, the condom comes off without your knowledge and then the sex continues, okay? That's very different. That's very, very bad. Okay. And so that's what I'm saying. We have to have this conversation with, a deep understanding. And then I just want to end on this TikTok here because I feel like a lot of people, including some people in this chat, you're not doing the work you think you're doing. You're not there yet. But listen to her tell you, you have to keep deconstructing, not even just from religion, but from everything else you've been taught.
Does not end. Your deconstruction does not end at religion alone. Your deconstruction does not end at deconstructing from Christianity or Islam or all of that. It does not end there. We are on the internet and we are seeing the influx of people deconstructing from their religious beliefs and everything. But we are not seeing enough of deconstructing from other things. You cannot say you deconstructed from religion because it's patriarchal or misogynistic or all of this, and then you're now still misogynistic, you're homophobic, you're transphobic, you're classist, you're ableist. How does that work? I want us to see more of other types of deconstruction because there's been so much that has been ingrained that we need to unlearn and do all of this stuff that we are not unlearning from that too. It doesn't just end at religion.
Okay, so remember that. It doesn't just end at religion. You have to keep going. You have to deconstruct. Now, there is a lot of things at play here, but the point of this story is to highlight sexual abusers seeking political power. Okay, and yes, a white supremacist seeking political power. He had a Nazi tattoo. Yes. And yes, the white women that date these men and turn a blind eye to their politics or ignore the fact, like, yes, in an ideal world, she would have broken up with Graham Plattner / when she figured out he had a Nazi tattoo, right? But she's probably a white nationalist / racist woman. So again, racist women can be raped. Racist women can be physically abused. Racist women can be harmed. And from that perspective alone, we support all victims of abuse the same way we believe in housing for all people, even Nazis. Just because you're a Nazi doesn't mean when I advocate for universal housing, you're not getting a house. You're getting a house too. You're welcome. Because that's the point. Either my values apply to all people in this regard, because these are community efforts, or they don't apply to anybody. I'm not sitting here, look, I have no enemies. I live on a planet full of animals. And as animals, we are ruthless to each other. And I'm trying to have a deeper relationship with our animal experience in order to give each other the best possible opportunity to have the best possible outcome to the best of our abilities. Okay? So again, when we have this conversation, it is not to take away her racist background. It is not to take away Graham's racist background. It's not. All of them go together. Patriarchy, capitalism, white supremacy. All three must be dismantled. Okay? So we do not support white supremacists, right? We do not support this woman's politics, Lindsay's politics. We support her as a victim of physical violence. That's how we support her. And the same way I'm happy to march side by side with you against fascism, I know I'm marching with people that are racist. Guys, just because you're anti-Trump doesn't mean you're not racist. Lots of racists hate Trump. And I just need you to process that information. Remember that hating Trump is like not even, it doesn't tell me anything about you. I learned this very quickly. Didn't I tell you this? I've learned this throughout my life. It wasn't enough to have people hate Trump. It's just not enough. It doesn't tell me anything about your politics. Lots of fucking racists hate Donald Trump. So remember, like, how we're seeing this and why I'm saying what I'm saying is ultimately to point out that these big three, they're impacting all of our lives. And if we could only give people the tools to deconstruct, and look, most of them won't. Most of us will hit our ceiling. And this will be it. This will be the depth of our introspection. And then we'll die. Okay? And that's it. So take a deep breath and remember that you are an animal on a planet, and we're here to do our best by being a little less bad every day. And that's the best we can do. Okay?